we are going to take a look at a couple of simple critical value problems where we're asked to find the critical values of a function. So recall that the critical values of a function are anywhere where it is equal to, its derivative is equal to 0 or its derivative is undefined. So for both of these problems, our first step will be to take the derivative. We get f prime of x using the power rule is equal to 6x minus 8. Since 6x minus 8 is a polynomial function, we know that it's defined for all real numbers, so we don't need to worry about when the derivative is undefined, but we will see when it equals 0. So 6x minus 8 equals 0 tells us that x equals 8 over 6, or 4/3. So this function has just one critical value at x equals 4/3. The next one we're going to look at is a trigonometric function, sine of x times cosine of x. This one will be a little more difficult, but only because the derivative is a little more difficult to find, and we'll have to solve a trigonometric equation to get our answers. So we'll start off looking for f prime of x, and since it's sine of x times cosine of x, we're going to have to use the product rule, which will be the derivative of sine, cosine x, times cosine x, plus sine x, times the derivative of cosine, which is negative sine x. Simplifying that down a little bit gives us cosine squared x minus sine squared x as our derivative. Since sine and cosine are both defined for all real numbers, their squares are also defined for all real numbers, and we can subtract one from the other for all real numbers. So our derivative is always defined. We just need to see when it equals 0. There are a couple of different ways to do this. I think the easiest is to use the cosine double angle identity and turn this into cosine of 2x is equal to 0. Well, cosine is equal to 0 when the angle is pi over 2, or 3 pi over 2, or 5 pi over 2, or negative pi over 2. Essentially, whenever our angle, in this case 2x, is equal to pi over 2 plus pi n, where n is any integer. So for our purposes, x, now when we divide by 2, will be pi over 4 plus pi n over 2. And now all we have to do is plug in values of n starting at 0 until the numbers that we get for x are outside of our range of values that we are looking for the critical values from 0 to 2 pi. So when n is 0, pi over 2 times 0 is 0, and we just get pi over 4. When n is 1, we have pi over 4 plus pi over 2, which is 3 pi over 4. When n is 2, we have pi over 4 plus pi, which is 5 pi over 4. And when n is 3, we have pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 2, which is 7 pi over 4. If we go beyond that to n equals 4, we have 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi. And we're adding pi over 4 to that, and that is now outside of our 0 to 2 pi interval. So these are our 4 critical values for the function f of x equals sine x cosine x.